Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Flux Dev Meeting, some or other time zone edition, Thursday edition, let's say. I should remind you of the code of conduct, which, as Alison often says, boils down to be excellent to each other. And with that said, I will dive into the agenda. So let's have a look. Oh, here is the bed that I made for myself last week, I think, which is a round of what's happening on the way to GA. I have a quick thing to report for that, which is that I'm working on porting the image automation controller to the new runtime package, like I did with the image reflector one. So it's basically bringing it up to date with, so it conforms to the new version of the new runtime package and helpers and so on. Is there any other news on the road to GA? Not sure.
I know there is. I'm like, what is it? Well, one thing that is going on is there are some end user logs coming out. That's only related in the sense that it shows, the health of the project and so on.
But that's cool. Is that through the community team?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So there have been several. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who might be watching this before it comes out. But there's so we've reached out to a number of people that we know that are that self-disclose that they're using Flux and have been setting those up, as well as a few people have reached out to the team. So the community maintainers, whatever, have been interviewing folks and setting that up. Daniel H has been doing a really great job at that. I've been helping with the actual interviews themselves, and we're making progress.
Very neat. What's the expected time of publication for those, roughly? Just in the next wee while.
I would hope the next few weeks. Ideally sooner, but I know that there are several pretty pressing matters coming up that aren't super related to this. But for example, KubeCon is coming up, and there's a lot of unknowns.
Right.
With this particular event, you know what I mean? So there's that, and then there's the normal prep time. So I'm just thinking it might get interrupted, but otherwise I would say it shouldn't take more than a week or so. It's just a matter of people's schedules.
Since you reminded me, I'm going to step out of the table of agenda and mention that Hida and I have recorded a talk for KubeCon about the roadmap. Hida does a pretty cool demo of, spoilers. Hida does a demo of the image automation stuff, because that is sort of the most recent thing that reached stable API and isn't well explained in demos yet. And I do a lot of talking, basically, with some pretty minimal slides. So if that sounds amazing, that'll be at KubeCon in the maintainers track. Right, back to the agenda. Samtochi, was there work on the notification controller? Is that, I mean, I know it's only been a week, so maybe you're still getting reoriented.
I was ill for like the past 2 days. So today is when I actually started working on it, but yeah, Hide and Piers and the others already did like a lot of work. It was left is really not that much. So yeah, I should tidy it up before today's over so that we can get reviews in and get it merged by next week or something.
Brilliant. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
And he is not here today, so he can't tell us about the Helm bit. I don't know if that's progressed. Stefan, do you know if it has got past his? I imagine he hasn't, because like me, he's been recording KubeCon and figuring out demos, so maybe not. But he was blocked on figuring out how the Helm chart thing should work. Is that right?
Yeah, no advancement there.
Okay.
Today we are stuck with upgrading controller runtime and env test. Yeah.
Enough said. I got the sound of it. Okay. Okay, I think that might be it for the midnight train to GA, as Sebastian suggested. It should be called. What's next? Scott, revising the project description. Is there the movement there?
Yes, there is. Well, sort of. Let's see. I just love what you wrote last, and there's no more, it was a good synthesis of different things that were there, but also just like a nice, like getting back to a snappier description that's still accurate. And I think it conveys the meaning, so personally, my suggestion was this, or not my suggestion, my personal favorite is this, and this is just my 2 cents, and I wanted to see what everyone else thinks. In fact, you can look at it here, because I went ahead and went out on a limb, because this isn't official, it's just a place to describe Flux, and I went ahead and used your description, because we can always change it there. What do you think? This is when adding the link to the community tools, as Stefan was had mentioned.
Yeah.
Does it sound right? Continuous and progressive delivery from Git to Kubernetes?
I like it, but I would. But yeah, no, it works there as well, doesn't it?
I mean, continuous delivery from Git to Kubernetes sounds a little snappier, but we also are one of those, it's one of the big parts of the Flux project, right? Is that we're also pushing the bar with progressive delivery as part of CD, right? So,
yep.
Okay.
Yep. It seems like selling it short to not mention, not allude to Flagger. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's Daniel gave a thumbs up. I gave a heart. I gave a rocket ship emoji to your to your thing. Do you does anyone have any suggestions? I know we've got Stefan on the line. Does that feel right to you?
I don't know. Feels very confusing because Flux has nothing to do with progressive delivery.
Flux has nothing to do with
project does though, right?
Oh, progressive delivery. Oh yeah, but we're talking again. Flux is Flux is the whole project that includes Flagger.
No, I would list there two separate things, like Flux, which builds on top of the Helm APIs, and Flagger, which integrates with Helm by running tests during the canary analysis, which are totally different things from the Helm perspective. And I don't know.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, it's always an interesting topic, because we chose to include Flux within the Flagger, chose to include Flagger within the CNCF Flux project. And so when describing what Flux is, should it include the entire project, or should it only include the?
No, on the CNCF website, both Flux and Flagger are listed.
Okay.
On the CNCF landscape, both Flux and Flagger are listed because they do completely separate things. Where is the confusion?
But Flagger is in the CNCF by virtue of being part of, basically in that project, right? So yeah, it is kind of, there's Flux, the actual tooling, and then there's Flux, the project, and Flux, and one includes Flagger and the other one doesn't. So it is a bit.
At least I think from Helm's perspective, it does make sense what Stefan's saying. They should be separate billings because they have totally different integrations.
Yeah, I can definitely see that in this area, but it does beg the question of how we describe Flux generally, which is what this issue is about. So
the description is of the Flux project. If it's describing the Flux project, then I think include both things. But fair play that the thing where you've mentioned it right now should just be the continuous delivery.
I just think we need to get our story straight. I agree what you're saying, Stefan, in the context of, now that you say it, yeah, it would make sense as we're talking about the tools. They can also be sub projects. That's fine. And that makes total sense that they take care of different areas. But then what this issue is about in general is about like what we say on fluxcd.io, or how we sort of send out our message. Because right now it says, what is it? Flux is a tool for keeping Kubernetes clusters in sync with source configure, blah, 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 right? What it sounded like folks thought could use an update. And I guess that's what I'm talking about, or that's what this is about, mainly.
I was commenting on the Helm stuff.
I agree with you. Yeah.
On the website is very clear because we say Flux, the GitOps family of projects, and then we mention continuous and progressive delivery. There is also Flagger listed here on the main page and so on. I have no issues with that. My issue was with confusing people that have no idea what Flux is. They'll end up on the Helm page and they expect when they install Flux to get progressive delivery, which they don't.
Right.
They will maybe in the future if we integrate Flagger into the Flux distribution, but even so, I don't think it will be a default controller or whatever. So it will still be something optional that you have to install.
Yeah. I agree. That makes sense. Okay, I'll make an action item to change or to update that. But then that actually maybe helps this issue, where I liked Michael's suggestion, but should we say in this should we actually say the Flux family of projects in the description itself, just to make this more clear that it's continuous and progressive delivery from Git to Kubernetes?
It's on the website, right?
Yes.
Which thing on the website are we replacing? I'm just looking at it, the homepage right now.
It looks like it already has been replaced on the website.
Yeah, Daniel wrote this like, I don't know, months ago.
Right, yeah,
we had this discussion in this meeting months ago.
Right, and this issue was also, this discussion was raised months ago. The reason that it's raised again is because Daniel wrote that kind of off the hip, and he thought, we really, it's good enough for now. Do we still like this? And that's why he wanted me to discuss this issue with you all.
So there are several places where we list Flux, for example, on the operator hub. And there we use the same description as in the Flux 2 repo README. There are many places where we list Flux, like the Helm page and so on. So I think the discussion was more about redefining Flux as in Flux alone, what's in the Flux version 2 README. And if we are doing that, we shouldn't write we shouldn't mention progressive delivery for the Flux version 2 because it doesn't do it. we can say you can extend Flux with Flagger to achieve progressive delivery or whatever. But it's
that
not
makes
part
sense.
of that.
So maybe, okay, so then we're just, to be clear, what we're talking about, we should just be very clear in each of the areas where we're describing what Flux is. If we're talking about the Flux family of projects, if we're talking about the Flux CLI plus
Controllers. Yeah.
controllers. Yeah, so maybe we should just simply say that on the Flux 2 README, that the Flux CLI and controllers are, you know, continuous delivery from Git to Kubernetes or something like this.
Yeah, so instead of the first phrase on the Flux version to README, right? Flux is a tool for keeping clusters, blah, blah, blah. We place that with Flux is a continuous delivery from Git to Kubernetes.
Hey, Scott, is there a kind of, what am I trying to think? I don't know what the name for it is. There's often organizations or whatever will say, this is how you use the logo and this is the language you're allowed to use.
Yes.
Or you should use, like the CNCF and KubeCon sort of have, you have to use CNCF and Cloud Native Con together. Sorry, KubeCon, whatever. We could have, do we have, or could we have a similar thing for Flux and the community thing? Not to be kind of normative, but just to say, you know, if you're trying to get a pithy description, this is the one we stick to. If you're describing all the projects together, talk about it this way. If you're just describing GitOps Toolkit, but you see what I mean?
Exactly. Yes. Just a style guide. So I think that's
style guide
you're going for. Yeah, and I think you're right. So this, I think I don't want to take up more time in this meeting with this because it's, you know, we have other more important things, but this was something that basically, yes, in different areas, other people, it may not just be us, but other people are going to grab things that we wrote and put them somewhere else. So if we are, so I think the style guide actually makes a ton of sense. Yeah, all right, I'll go ahead and sketch it up real quick and
awesome.
see what y'all think. I'll try to use what I heard in this meeting and what will
Yeah,
make it make sense.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice one. Okay. I just want to invite, Stacey quite often has to leave halfway through. So I just want to check that you, Stacey, if you want to mention any upcoming workshops or anything while you're here.
Yeah, I can be here the full time too, so I can go last if you'd like.
Oh, okay. Well, since I've already interrupted you, the meeting for you, go for it.
Sure. So I actually just listed something on the calendar today. I'm not sure when it will start showing up on the team calendar on fluxcd.io. But so Kingdon is going to be speaking with Jason Morgan, and I'll put this into the notes in a bit too, on the 28th of September, and they're going to be doing a Flux, Flagger, and Linkerd talk. So we're going to have that on the 28th, and I will list that in the notes as well, so you can reference it, and it will be on the calendar hopefully soon. I haven't noticed it on the fluxcd.io site yet, but I'm assuming that will update within the next however many hours.
Cool.
It refreshes every 24 hours, but I'm not sure what time.
Cool.
Good to see Flux and Flagger pairing together.
Yeah.
That's a Cloud Native at Scale meetup, I think.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it for me for now. We're working on doing a Flux ecosystem event for after KubeCon, and just keep your eyes out for that. I'll let everyone know when that gets posted. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Stacey. Okay. Kingdon Flux v1.24.1.
Thank you for your help with the release this morning, Michael and Hide, if you catch us on the recording. There was an issue with the release because we use this tool called GitHub Release that we apparently forked back in 2016. And long story short, something changed in the last 2 weeks that made it not work anymore with a 400 error. So I don't think there was anything important in our fork for us. And I have us back on the upstream latest version of GitHub release now, and everything seems to be fine. So we have a new release of Flux v1 again that does not have any CVE warnings from the base image. And that's it from me.
Good stuff. Cool. And you managed to do the dance of deleting the tag and then rerunning it.
Yep.
Yeah, good. Okay, cool.
Yep, I have all
It
the
can be a bit-
permissions I need to do releases now. I think I might have already, but was
Cool.
possible, yes. Oh, so we didn't need to burn a release version. Their build that failed, we still use that version. So there's no
Yeah.
gap.
Yep, cool. Okay, Sebastian, you wanted to ask what is the new model for unit testing, the one that doesn't use the BDD.
That is correct.
That is a faithful rendition of my question.
Yes. I asked because I'm working on unit tests for another controller, and
So I
could
think Hida would
possibly
probably, yeah.
bring stuff back, or do that better if I could benefit from your wisdom,
Such as it is.
or contribute my own wisdom, and such as it is.
So Hida's not here. I think he did that work, but I can I think I know the motivation, which is that it is. We've talked for a while about how it's actually quite tricky to structure tests within the behavior-driven development. I think that BDD stands for, and not really for reasons that are to do with Kubernetes or Kubernetes controllers, especially. It's just a bit weird. So I think Hida's motivation was just to make it a bit more tractable to write unit tests, and Stefan may be able to step in and correct me or add more, embellish on the detail. But I'm pretty sure that's, so it may be, from your point of view, Sebastian, it may be a matter of taste. Like, it is not, if you find there's no technical reason to kind of prefer one over the other, it's simply because we tend to find it easier to write tests out just without structure, that the structure that the Ginkgo forces you into. But you
There is
see
a
that the
technical reason.
extensive tests. Go ahead, Stefan.
So there is a technical reason. Like, the major issue we have with Ginkgo is not just us, everybody in the Kubernetes space. And that's why also the cluster API people drop Ginkgo. We are doing it, and lots of people are doing it. The major issue is that once you write lots of tests, it's impossible with Ginkgo to run just a single test. You have to run the whole suite. So you have to wait like 3 minutes for changing a test, right? With Go testing, I don't know, any kind of IDE you are using, being Golang or Visual Studio Code, you just set some environment variables to the env test binaries, and you can run every single test, because when you run a test, it runs the main test thing that sets up the etcd and the kube API. Then you can run just that test which you are working on. So that's one thing that was very painful, and the other one is how you write the tests, which are encapsulated one in another. You have these nice features like do this before the test and after the test, but it's once the test gets covers more use cases or stuff like that, you make different versions of it, it becomes very hard to maintain, read, and so on, right? So we are back to basics, writing pure Go tests. We still use Go Mega to do things like eventually or is not nil or the sugar syntax around,
the expectations.
asserting things.
Yeah.
But we really want to, be able to run a single test or some tests using Go
You can run a
tests.
single test, Stefan. You just can't pick it from the runner. You just go and add a F in front of the particular test. But admittedly, that is quite awkward to do, and it's easy to leave that in your source code when you go to
Whereas
commit it or
in
something.
VS Code, if you have a single test function, you can just click run test and it will run that test. The reason that I started writing tests outside of Ginkgo is I would look at Ginkgo tests and couldn't understand them. I couldn't read Ginkgo tests, and unless your brain is already trained to look at and understand Ginkgo tests, it's basically impossible to figure out what any given test is doing. So I'm coming from the Java background. I wrote Java unit tests for a decade, and I was just so used to the pattern that I couldn't like readjust, at least for a while. So I started writing tests using GoMock and GoMega, and so I've written kind of a little like wrapper that I've copied over into different projects a couple of times, and I'm in the process of extracting from the current one to just like set things up and make it a little easier to start a test and define a bunch of things that have to happen to clean up afterward. And it's like a utility class for tests. If I can extract that, I can give it to you.
You might.
But I think this is something I could
Testify.
probably contribute. Yeah, I've looked at Testify. It doesn't do exactly. I'm picky, and this is one of the things that I stick on. But yeah, I was just wondering about it, and I wanted to understand the motivation, and also sort of get a sense of what the new tests should look like. So I think probably the best thing for me to do there is Hide's got this stuff in a branch, or has anything been merged yet?
It's all they tend to be in a branch called reconcilers-dev.
Okay.
So in source controller and elsewhere, that's where they'll be. I've not rewritten the test for the image automation stuff because it's not part of conformance with the new runtime packages, and they're quite modest anyway. I don't think they're especially difficult to understand. Maybe someday, me or someone else will. But yeah, source control is probably the place to look.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That helps me a lot. Yeah. So I'll see if there's anything I can add.
They're roughly equivalent. It's just hard to. I think everyone, or nearly everyone, found it difficult to get their heads around.
Yeah, and I don't use etcd and
aspect.
the Kube API either. I just mock everything. So like,
well, I think you will find, if you're writing a controller specifically, you will find using env test or test env, whichever way around it is, really, really useful.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it makes writing things a little easier, but I just didn't want to have an external instance of etcd as a dependency. I wanted it to be completely encapsulated within the test itself. So mocking seemed like it made more sense to me, but I don't think that anybody wants to completely rewrite a set of unit tests that currently use an etcd instance to not.
To kind of recreate the right circumstances, you would have to end up adding things to your mock that would mean that it's more complicated than just using etcd. Specifically, the read and write paths for a controller client are different. Read path goes through a cache, whereas the write path is direct. And if you don't include that in your mock, then you might end up inadvertently relying on behavior that isn't actually what happens in a real deployment.
Yeah, isn't that hidden behind Kube Builder though? Like you're not writing your own
There's
cache.
things like that.
Your
And-
test just depends on a certain thing coming back from the cache. It doesn't.
Well, it depends what you mock, but my point is,
Yeah.
you would have to have that as part of your mock, or at least have something that kind of you could put behind something that behaves very much like the Kubernetes API that the cache would then look at. So either way, that's quite a big ask. It ends up just being better to use etcd.
Yeah, maybe my cases are a little simpler because I'm working on a single controller and it's doing a fairly simple thing.
Well, you might think so, but it's very easy to introduce bugs that rely on the read path being synchronous.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
you write something and then you expect to see that reflected in what you read, and it may not be.
okay. Yeah, maybe I could show you at some point what I've done and you can point out.
Yeah.
Because I'm sort of just doing this in isolation. You know, in each case, I've been the only developer on the project who gave much of a toss about unit testing. So nobody really looks at them but me. And
Okay.
so like if I'm doing something, I would like to know if the things I'm doing are not optimal for various reasons.
Yeah, DM me.
Yeah, that would be great. And then maybe I can bring some of it back to. I'm actually pulling the project again right now. I didn't set it up in VS Code, so I had to go hunt it down. Great. Thank you.
All right. Shall we go on to the next agenda? Kingdon, you want to say a bit about the bug scrub?
Yeah, I just wanted to plug the bug scrub again. It'd be great if we were able to get any of the maintainers to join us again. It's always good to have you. And I just wanted to let everyone know that we have enhanced the bug scrub format with discussions. So in the past, we had only done issues and pull requests, which after one bug scrub event with discussions, I think this is a major improvement. And we're going to see people get a lot more out of this activity now. But the point is that anyway, they're all mixed together. So we can see bug scrub pull requests or issues or discussions in whatever sort order we want with whatever filtering we want. And next week it's on this time. Exactly. That's how we have it scheduled. No, it's not. I'm sorry. That's incorrect. It's in the afternoon Eastern time because at this time we have our all hands meeting. So
I wonder if we could have a kind of rota, because
it's
I
not
think it's
too
good
late,
to have a
it's not too
maintainer
late
there.
to reschedule it altogether. We could change the time because I'm afraid that all of our core maintainers are in Euro time zones and they won't want to do an evening meeting. So the timing of the Thursday meeting might be wrong.
Yeah, but it's tricky, that, isn't it? Basically. But no, I think it doesn't have to be what you call the core maintainers. I think it's just, you know, having people that have a sort of continuing contribution, let's say, which they may or may not be paid to do. Come along to the bug scrub might be good. Because you know, it shows, it's leading by example a bit, isn't it? It's like showing that it's considered a serious thing that is worthy of contributors
Spending hours on, yeah, and
yeah,
as far as
which it is. I mean, it's really useful.
Yeah, as far as the change related to discussions and how much accessibility, I think this is a dramatic improvement to the accessibility for the community for this event. I think it would be more likely that people who come to bug scrubs from now on will want to return. I think this is
Cool. That's
Yeah.
good. Hey, one thing I just thought of is, can you include in the format the ability to kind of escalate something to this meeting? That
Yes.
might be a worthwhile thing to kind of have a link between them.
Yeah.
Because even
So-
if people aren't in the bug scrub itself, then if something is escalated, it's like, this seems serious, but we couldn't resolve it in the bug scrub. Let's escalate it, and then it can be brought to this meeting for people to discuss.
I think we've had that come up before, and I hadn't really thought that there should be a formal process, but it would make sense to have a formal process. We have a column called flag on the far right that is meant to be like the first emoji column, but less noisy. So
Okay.
that's what we'll use. We'll put a flag on an issue if we want to escalate it to this meeting. But because of the timing, some weeks bug scrub will be before this meeting, and some weeks it will be after. I think that's fine, and the format will accommodate that.
Cool.
But as far as discussions, the other thing that's different about discussions is they aren't necessarily over when they have the answered flag. So we've never pulled closed issues or pull requests into the bug scrub before because it never made sense to. But now that they're open and answered statuses, I think it does make sense to sometimes include answered discussions in the bug scrub. Since the
discussions are
really
a weird one, aren't
ongoing,
they?
they can be, they can be useful for a long time. They can be updated. They can serve as documentation almost. So
That whole answered thing makes me think we're using discussions slightly wrong, because they tend to go on even once they're answered, and there being an answer doesn't necessarily mean that whatever it was is resolved, because it's totally up to the person who logged it to click this is answered.
we can change our mind about what the right answer is. That's, it's not necessarily permanent. Or there can be developments that make a newer answer better in the future. So
maybe something to consider another time is what we use discussions for. I think we use them for kind of design a lot, whereas maybe it's better to actually have ADR style documents for design changes, and then discuss it on the PR.
maybe so.
Just a thought. Anyway, okay, cool. I'm glad that discussions are being included, because there's a lot of activity in those, and
I think that's where the
a lot
bulk
of
of
it
our
could be an
activity
issue.
is now. So
Right. I guess there's a reason why GitHub made it easier to transfer things between discussions and issues and discussions.
yeah, part of building discussions in was to consume the GraphQL API, which turned out to be very complicated. And so the good news is, if you need to consume anything from the GraphQL API, I know how it works now. So don't spin your wheels trying to figure out how, unless there's an easier way from Go. I wrote a Ruby client that does it, but it's fairly close to the metal. So certain parts of the GitHub API are only available through GraphQL. I think they're not developing the REST API anymore.
I think that's been the case for a wee while. It's just that they take a long time to retire anything. So, Okay, let's go back to the agenda. What have we got? No more things. Anyone want to bring up any other business? Speak now.
Do we need to talk about anything related to the Flux booth for KubeCon, or should we just chat about that? Later?
I mean, I think I can probably do things offline with everyone.
Cool.
Yeah, not sure.
So basically, the community team, maintainers will connect with the other maintainers and just sort out the details. There's probably a lot of stuff that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think I don't know when the maintainer track talk is on, but I think I'm expected to do a Q&A as part of it. So I'm going to be up at some silly hour anyway, so it's possible I'll be able to do some booth type stuff around that.
Okay.
Yeah, so just keep me in mind, I guess. I'll go and look at what time it is.
Okay. Yeah, I will too. Thanks, Michael.
Okay, all right. I think that's it for this week. Thank you very much, everyone. And see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Unaziwa.